I want to introduce a woman that needed no such encouragement. That's how exceptional this woman is. She needs your support. Please do anything you can right now for her. Blog about her, write about her. She needs a lot of money, she needs a lot of support, and you guys can be instrumental in building up that momentum for her. Please, a big round of applause for Tarryl Clark and Michelle Bachmann.
So some of you have heard this before, but I was never going to run for office. How many of you can relate to that? Some of you, I'm sure. Ever. It was never, ever. I figured I had appointed officials stamped on my forehead. And actually, we now have a governor that I might have been able to do that with, ironically. But, you know, here's the thing. For me, I did so much work, like many of you have, on a number of issues. I did a lot of organizing. I worked on policy issues. I'm a former legal aid attorney. I worked with the Children's Defense Fund. I ran our community action network. And in all of those jobs, part of what we were trying to do is make sure we were empowering people, getting them to stand up for themselves, and getting them to run for office. Well, I have to say, eventually, if you keep encouraging people to run for office, eventually, you probably got to be willing, when people talk to you, to think about it. But for me, it took 4 months. Literally, it wasn't 6 times. It was 4 times 30. I mean, it was a lot of time. And that is because I live in a socially conservative part of the state. I'm just talking about our area. I did not grow up there. My grandparents were not from there. I did not necessarily fit the profile. I was a Democrat. I was a female. I mean, we could go through the whole list. And I also had a job that I loved, and I was really pretty darn good at changing laws anyway. So what was going to happen if I got into the legislature? Were they going to, treat me the way they often treat freshmen? Wasn't so sure that was a great idea. But I got convinced to do it. One at a time, people started flicking off the reasons why this wasn't a good idea. But I got to tell you, what my husband and I and our kids had to decide was that we knew we had to be willing to do it more than once. Because I was running against somebody that nobody was mad at. I'm obviously not talking about Michelle Bachmann now. I'm talking about the guy who's now our mayor, who is my favorite former opponent. We actually are pretty good friends at this point. And the reason why for that goes back to what Sam said. If you have to run to win, you run hard, and then you make sure if you didn't win that you keep moving. So for those of us who are moms, and I would say for those of you who are dads, you could probably relate to this. But after we had our first son, my grandmother visited me in the hospital and said, "Oh, congratulations! Now when did you get the next one?" Usually it's not a good idea to ask a woman right after. Otherwise she's going to have the next one. Which is why I tell candidates now, what I tell women candidates who are thinking about it, Kristen, I told you this last time, is that we have to be willing to do this more than once, because it sometimes just takes a while to make it happen. And now, obviously, I have to say I also don't believe in futility, and I really believed that with the president we have, that it was time to change the status quo. It was time to really change some things in Washington. There really is so much at stake. We were just talking about the core of our democracy and what's being taken away, including from people like Michelle Bachmann. People who talk about rights, people who wrap themselves in the flag, and at the same time, they're fighting to take away our very rights that we believe in. A number of us have talked about economic security over the last years. Whatever happened to those jobs, the 7 million jobs we lost in the recession? We should be fighting to be making sure that we are regaining those jobs here, not sending them overseas. We should be standing up for our workers' rights. Right. We should be standing up for the environment. We should be making sure on health, whether it is prenatal care, whether it's contraception, whether it's reproductive rights, whether it's seniors in nursing homes, we should be standing up for those things. But that's not what's happening out there right now, right? So my journey, I think, is similar to some. It took a lot to persuade me, but once you got me going, we're not going to stop, right? So we thought we were going to be able to beat Michelle, plain and simple. Too much at stake in our country. And I still believe there's too much at stake. As a matter of fact, it's not worse when you see that Ryan plan out there and what it wants to do. When you talk about redefining rape, among other things, those things are so critical for those of us in our communities and our families, regardless of where we live. And we have to absolutely join together. The right's been very good at splitting us apart. So I tell you those things that are substantive, because that is part of what we need to be about. I will also go back, though, to the comments that you made about appearance, etc. So I was elected in a special election to the state senate. 11 months later, I was reelected, had to go through that fun again, And yes, in my special election, the first day I came back and saw 2 attack pieces of lit in our mailbox, I just said, oh, my kids have seen this. You know, my kids' friends see this. Oh, my kids' friends' parents have seen this. And our youngest son was a senior in high school at the time, so a lot of his friends, this was the first opportunity to vote, and I thought, oh no, this is just awful. And I was really embarrassed for them. I was worried for them. And so about a day later went by, asked them what they thought, what they were hearing from their friends, a lot of who are Republican families. They were all mad. They were so mad because they knew me. And that's part of what I think how we overcome some of the sexism is we make sure that we're out there, that together, that we're talking to people. They see we don't have horns and that we're going to stand up for them. But when I was in the legislature, so we ran for re-election, won the number 2 position in the state senate. A couple days after that, I started getting, not surprisingly, I was the primary spokesperson for our caucus, lots of communications. And a couple of years after that, I had this wonderful young woman. She was the first person to actually bring this up to me. She was in the office for about 3 weeks. She said, do you know you have a hair fan club? Do you have any idea how many contacts you get about your appearance, including the people who don't like your suit or don't like... And I think, you know, that's something that really is absolutely unfair. And it is something we need to call on. I will say that in running now, because of redistricting, one of the other things I think men don't go through, men just move. Men don't say what they're doing, they just do it. I think for women, you know, we end up being put under extra scrutiny about what are you doing and why and where, as opposed to this is where it makes sense, this is what I'm doing, this is where my community is. And as we're moving forward, it's interesting thinking about how you take these things to a new level. So I will say with Michelle, one of the things that both of you were talking about, I absolutely agree, there's a lot of sexism out there for a number of these women. But she purposely is talking the way she is. She is a smart person. And so it's important that, I think for many of these folks out there, to me, don't diminish people by saying they're crazy or stupid or any of those things. Those are the sexist things. Call them on what's wrong and hold them accountable. And for all you bloggers, hold them accountable. Help us hold them accountable, because alone we cannot get that message through. But together, we can absolutely win these races and take back our country. So it'll be fun to get to talk some more to go with. Almost $5 million. Of course, she spends 11.
No, but give Cheryl, she was one of the top fundraisers in the country. This is a very serious and credible candidate. Give her a round of applause. Very serious, very credible. And with a heck of a lot of help. Almost 50,000 people helped. No, when Sam talked about the $5 piece, $5. Get somebody else to give $5. Get somebody else to give $5. That's how we change things.
Absolutely.
And we do like those $2,500. Would you like to ask Charles some questions right now? Real quick and we'll go to you.
First of all, attack on you. What did you decide to do about it?
Which one?
What you just mentioned about you don't want to know my family, my kids, my friends.
Well, you know, one of the things that's a little bit harder when you're running in a special election that's 2 days after Christmas, and you only can spend $60,000 because we have pretty heavy campaign finance limits. There's not a lot of great ways out there. What we did, because there wasn't, I did speak back to the paper. I mean, absolutely did that. But what happened was we had an incredible network that also then just pushed back out. And it was not just Democrats, it was Republicans too. Because it went to the heart of who I was, and people knew better. And it helps. The hard part about these congressional times, even if you're running for 18 months or something, because of people's attention span, you may only have moments. I will say a much harder thing in a way is when you're running against another woman. And in all due respect, I think we should be good women. Good women. Is Michelle ended up, she started attacking in August, and that's all she did. And that's what the right does. It might have been her. We expect it to be somebody else this time. It could be, you know, some business group or whatever. It got to the point that there were attack lit pieces every day or every other day. I got to tell you, when you raise $5 million, it's hard to actually break all the way through that. What we did have was a great grassroots organization that kept going back out to the door and saying, no, that's not right. And so that helped a lot too. But honestly, yes, as Krista was saying, you know, in a tsunami year, it wasn't enough.